Scope creep is the absolute bane of a web developer's life. And you can sit there on both sides of the fence. You think, do I just let this build until the website project is almost unrecognizable from what you started with? Or do I push back on it and risk the client cancelling the project and not getting paid? So today we're talking about scope creep because show me a website designer who hasn't had a client push the scope up over and over again. There are a few issues with scope creep here. One is the client's not really having a healthy respect for your boundaries. Once you've started the web design project, your boundary is the project details that you've already carved out together. That's what's being built. And it only takes a couple of clients who do this big scope creep to really rock your stability within the web design world. Because one of the issues with scope creep is that it means that the website takes longer to build. And the longer you are building this website, it means the longer and further away you are from building your next website, marketing for your next website, being paid on your next website. And if you followed me for a while, you'll know that I'm really big on process. I'm really big on boundaries. So let's assume you've already sent out your contract. When clients come back and they're like, oh, can I add this in? Oh, I'll do this, that, and the other. And it's like that tap, 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 tap. They never get to sign out of their web design thinking, the build, anything like that. And actually, other than you've got to build this website for them, part of handing over the website is that they don't have to think about it. They've already had to think about the branding and the copywriting and the images that go on the site. They don't need to be there in the weeds with line by line of code by code. What we really want, and again, I go through this with my processes, is we want to be able to each week give them an update and say, hey, this is what your website looks like now. And for them to be really surprised and delighted by it. You want people to come away with a really positive experience of working with you. And a scope creep doesn't give that. So the first thing that I do with the how to handle this is when I first introduce myself to people and we agree the website build, I immediately tell them what they can expect the process to be. That I will contact each week, that they will usually hear from me on a Friday, that they'll have a website walkthrough each week in of our progress in their inbox, and that they should email me back with any feedback, and I'll take that on board and they'll see that the following week in the next week's development. If I have a client who is doing that kind of scope creepy thing and they're emailing quite a lot, what I will then try and do is bundle their emails. And it can be really tempting to email back after each email and, tap, 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 tap. And it just drains your energy and it's going to leave both of you feeling really bad. So if you have someone you notice that they're emailing 3 or 4 times a day, just set a time of day once a day where you will read their emails and respond to their emails. Or even if you read their emails earlier, that you will respond to them. And it will feel better for the client because you can give a more measured response because you're not replying on the fly each time. It also gives you that opportunity just to step back and have a think about it. I have a 3-hour rule. And if I receive an email that I don't really want to receive, for whatever reason, I leave it 3 hours before I respond, even if I know what my response is going to be. That's your first port of call, is to do once a day emailing with them. And then the next one is if they are saying, I'd really like this, I'd really like that. I tend to always say yes. However, I don't say, yeah, I'll get on that. I say to them, yeah, that sounds great. Do you have an example of what you would like? Blah, blah, blah. And then I will say to them, as this wasn't factored in the original scope of the project, I will have to look at adding this on. And I think that it's going to cost this much, or I'm quoting this much for it, which will be added to the end invoice, the final invoice. It will also take me an additional week or 2 weeks. So our timescale will now have moved from here to here, and the pricing is from here to here. And usually that's enough for a client to hold back and say, oh, actually, don't worry about it. It was just an idea. They feel like, oh, no, it's really good. And yeah, that calculator looks cool on the other site, but, I'm really good with where I'm at. And if it's a case of they say, yeah, I'm happy to pay that, and I'm happy for the timescales, then happy days, really, because they're getting what they want. They're happy to pay for it. They're respecting your boundaries, and you get paid more money for it. Now, something that you might struggle with here is they might ask for something which is outside of your skill set. And there's a couple of ways to handle this. The first one, and the one I would recommend the most, is to collaborate, is to find someone who can do that for you, find out what their hourly rate is. And it's okay to say to a client as well, that sounds like a great idea. I'm going to need to bring another developer on board just to code that bit of it. I'm going to go away and speak to some developers I know, and I'm going to come back to you with a timescale and a price for this project. And again, once they realize that a timescale and a price is going to be included in this, they might say, oh no, don't worry about it. But they might say, yeah, that's great. I look forward to hearing from you. Another way to do it is to say, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea and that's going to work brilliantly on the website. I'm going to be honest, that doesn't lie within my skill set. But what I can do is I can finish up the design and everything as we agreed. And when the project's done, I can hand this over to another developer who can do that final stage for you. Would you like me to find a developer, or did you have someone in mind? In none of these cases are we saying no. We're saying, yeah, that's great idea. They say for every action, there is a reaction. And this is the case. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm Holly C. Christie. Or go to websitesmadesimple.co.uk, fill out the get in touch form. You can even pop a voice note in there. I'd love to hear from you. I would love to hear your wildest scope creep stories, or just your most regular scope creep stories as well. That's all from me, and I will see you again next episode.